Okay, why don't you set the scene for us, Dave? Where are we? Van Halen headquarters, or what?
Good afternoon. I'm David Lee Roth, live in Hollywood, California, land of 1,000 dances. Today, the interview, live in front of your naked, steaming eyes. No, oh shit. We're in Hollywood, and this is where it all comes from. This is ground zero in Van Halen terminology. This is the office, man. This is the 7th floor, high in the basement of Hollywood, California. This is the land of 1,000 dreams here. This is where it all unfolds. The hopes, the dreams, the misery, the fantasies. It's all here, man.
Is it as much fun as you thought it would be?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It's everything you heard is true, and I know you're getting a bad impression of me right now. Doug, do me a favor and spread it around. Yeah, everything that you've heard is true. As a matter of fact, the people who are quietest out there in the music business are the ones who do the most. A lot of people don't like to do interviews, you know. A lot of people refuse to do interviews because they think they're being taken advantage of, and they think they're being put upon, and they're going to be mistranslated and re-edited and stuff. And most of them should, because they're so goddamn boring. But it's like, you know, I have fun at this, and it's not a least fun thing for me. This is a major fun. We are having very fun here, ladies and gentlemen. Are we having fun yet, Doug? And what it is like you have 3 answers that you give to any question you're going to ask me, see, which the first answer is, and you can paraphrase these, you don't use these exact words, but the first answer is, I think what you're trying to ask me is this, Doug, and I'll talk about whatever the I want. And the second one is, before I answer that, let me say this, Doug, and I talk about whatever the I want. And the third one is, you know, let me answer that this way, Doug, and I talk about whatever the I want, man.
Seems to fit like a glove. First come, first serve, he's serving it back. Travels life without a pack, without love. He comes from nowhere, he turns on his own. They call it hanging as he's headed for the moon, hanging
did you write most of the music?
Well, there's actually half cover tunes and half our own.
Yeah.
You know, and the fucking critics have been giving a shit about that. But I think it's a bunch of crap. You know?
Yeah.
I mean, say, Dancing in the Streets, Pretty Woman, Where Have All the Good Times Gone? Stuff like that. It's not like the original.
Uh-huh.
And whenever you do a cover tune, like say on our second album when we did You're No Good, whenever you redo a cover tune, I don't think you should do it like the original.
Uh-huh.
And I don't think any cover tune we've ever done has been like the original.
Yeah.
And it takes almost as much time to make a cover tune sound original as it does writing a song,
Yeah.
So fuck the critics.
Right on.
No, it just pisses me off, because I spend a lot of time, arranging and, playing synthesizer and shit on Dancing in the Streets, and they just kind of write it off like, it doesn't, it's just like the original, but that's bullshit. What we plan on doing this year, or, last year when we came off the Fair Warning tour, we were going to take some time off, and spend a lot of time writing and this and that, and Dave came up with the idea of, hey, why don't we start off the new year with just putting out a single? And Dave wanted to do Dancing in the Streets.
Uh-huh.
And he gave me the original Martha Reeves and the Vandellas tape, and I listened to it and I'm going, fuck, I can't get a handle on anything out of this song. I couldn't figure out a riff or, the way I play. I always like to do a riff as opposed to just hitting bar chords and strumming.
Yeah.
So I said, hey, look, if you want to do a cover tune, why don't we do Pretty Woman? And it took one day. We went to Sunset Sound, recorded it, and it came out early, right after the first of the year.
Yeah.
And it started. Everybody's just going, hey, fuck, man, you got a hit single on your hands, man. We need that album. We got to have that record. And we're going, wait a minute. We just did that to keep people, to keep us out there, so people know we're still alive. But they just kept pressuring. We need that album. So we jumped right back in without any rest, without any time to recuperate from the tour, and started recording.
How come Intruder wasn't on the front of Pretty Woman on the single? Just wanted to save it for the album? Or?
No, what happened was we thought we'd do something interesting and different, which was make a video to accompany Pretty Woman. We made a storyline that we thought was interesting, that we liked, directed it, wrote it, had some film made of it, and when we finally completed it, it turned out to be 5 minutes long. The song, Pretty Woman, is only 2 minutes and 59 seconds, depending on where you judge the fade out. Right. So instead of cutting the movie down, which we couldn't do effectively and still keep the storyline, what we did was we added music to it. So we went back in the studio and cut Intruder and passed it together, and there it was. Voila!
Kind of the order of songs. Which ones did you knock out first?
Well, the very first one was Pretty Woman.
That was a relatively straight cover. Weren't you tempted to cut loose?
Well, It's actually one of the, I think that and Dance the Night Away are the only two songs ever recorded by us that have no guitar solo.
Yeah.
And hey, well shit, you know, it almost makes me feel bad. It shows you how much guitar solos mean to people, because that's Pretty Woman is actually our only legitimate hit. You know, it got to number 11 or 10 or something like that in Billboard. Just like You Really Got Me was straightforward, the same, you know.
Yeah.
But it was like updated. I mean, actually people didn't even know that it was an old song until critics started saying, oh, here's Van Halen doing cover tunes again. They're good fucking songs.
Oh, yeah.
Why should they not be redone, you know, like the way we do them for the new generation of people?
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 5 in my Van Halen Deep Dive series, and today I'm going to be talking about one of the more polarizing albums in their entire catalog, and that of course is their 5th studio album, Diver Down. It was released on April 19th, 1982. This is the cassette copy. This is the first format that I actually owned this album on. And then you've got the CD. This happens to be the remastered version. But nonetheless, this album falls typically at the bottom of most Van Halen fans' David Lee Roth era albums. And for good reason. There are a number of cover songs on here. Pretty Woman, Where Have All the Good Times Gone, Dancing in the Streets, Happy Trails, Big Bad Bill. There's a couple of instrumentals. It is definitely padded out. And in terms of the standards that Van Halen had set for themselves with the first 4 albums, this was always going to be a disappointment. There is just no question about it, but it is not Van Halen's fault. As you heard Eddie talking about, the band wanted to take a break before they recorded their next album. They had done that. We're going on tour, then we go in the studio, then we go on tour, then we go in the studio, we go on tour. They wanted to break that cycle. They needed to take a break. They were getting sick of each other. They were exhausted from time on the road. Eddie Van Halen was not able to keep up with the demands of constantly churning out new songs. He was a great songwriter, but even the best songwriters at a certain point get burned out and they need a break. But David Lee Roth was concerned if they took too long of a break that they would fade from the public eye, that they would lose some of their popularity. So his suggestion was, let's just do a cover song, release it as a single, and then that will give Eddie some time to work on some new material, give the band time to develop it, and then record it at their leisure. Well, the song that they chose, Pretty Woman, ended up being their biggest hit to date. And record companies, as record companies do, they wanted to keep that steady stream of money continuing to flow in. So they demanded that Van Halen put together an album. They didn't want to, but eventually they relented against their better judgment. And so what you have here is kind of a grab bag album. I will tell you, I like this album. Do I like it more than any of their first 4 albums? Absolutely not. But do I hate this album? No, I don't hate this album. And I think most Van Halen fans, in hindsight, are kind of like, it's not terrible. It's not my favorite, but it's not a piece of garbage album either. There are certain songs on here that probably are also going to fall at the bottom of your song rankings for the David Lee Roth era, but this is what we got. And I'd rather have it than not have it. For one thing, I think David Lee Roth, this is some of the finest singing that he ever did. I feel like his voice was in top form for this album. But yeah, there's cover songs and yeah, there's some instrumentals, but it's a fun album. No Van Halen to this point has sounded as fun. It sounded like they were having as good a time as they were recording this album. Now, Eddie Van Halen, in interviews from the time, he was like, yeah, it was a lot of fun, and we worked hard on this album, and he sounds really proud of the work that he did on this album, but in subsequent interviews, I think he tried to distance himself a little bit from this album, and I think he realized what it was. It was a concession to the record company, and it was probably not a wise move other than, yeah, it's product out there for Van Halen fans, but in terms of their creativity, their momentum, I mean, it really was kind of a bump in the road. But you have more synthesizer work on here than we'd ever heard on a Van Halen album before. So you could kind of see the writing on the wall. You could see things moving in that direction. From the internal band standpoint, David Lee Roth's shtick was definitely growing old and stale. And he was getting on the nerves of his other bandmates. And I think the feeling was a little bit mutual. I think David Lee Roth was kind of tired of Eddie Van Halen being the guitar god and stealing a bit of his spotlight. But nonetheless, this is not the best, but it's not the worst album we could have gotten either. So anyway, let's talk about these songs. So it starts off with a Kinks cover, Where Have All the Good Times Gone? And yeah, I like this one a lot. This is probably, of all the covers on this album, this is probably my favorite. I think they do a very classic version of it. And I will tell you, it took me probably 20 years before I realized this was a Kinks cover. I had no idea. I didn't read the songwriting credits. It sounded like a Van Halen song. I wasn't a Kinks fan, or at least I knew the hits, but I didn't know kind of a deep cut like Where Have All the Good Times Gone? But Van Halen turns out a great performance of it. I like this one a lot. I am not going to say anything bad about this one.
Depression lasts for long. Once we had an easy ride and always felt the same. Time was on our side and we had everything to gain. Let it be like yesterday. Is that me or happy days? Mom, Pa look back on all the things they used to do. Never had no money and they always told the truth. Daddy didn't need no little toys. Mommy didn't need no little boys. Won't you tell me where have all the good times gone? Where have all the good times gone? Where have all the good times gone? Yesterday was such an easy game for you to play. But then let's face it, things are easier today. Yes, you need some bringing down. Get your feet back on the ground. Won't you tell me where have all the good times gone? 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 Where have all the good times gone?
The next track on here, and again with the song titles, can we put them in the right order? I don't know why. If this was just Van Halen trying to be difficult or they just didn't care. So anyway, the second song on here is Hang 'Em High, and this was a song that they had demoed as early as 1976. I think the original title was called Nighttime or something like that. I don't know. It had night in the title, whatever it was, but they changed the lyrics and they worked it up for this album. It's one of my favorite tracks on the album. It sounds like classic Van Halen. For some reason, the production, I love the production on this album. It sounds brighter. It sounds more welcoming. It sounds warmer than definitely warmer than Fair Warning, which had kind of a unique production sound all of its own. But I really like Ted Templeman's production on this album. Hang 'Em High is just great. Then the next track we get is Cathedral, which is a song that Eddie Van Halen had been playing live in concert. And I don't mean to call it a song. It's really more like a guitar showcase. But even when Eddie Van Halen is noodling around on these instrumentals, they're still very melodic. It's not just him doing some self-indulgent guitar shredding.
You're using a volume swell in Cathedral at the beginning?
Yeah, I'm using like a 61 Stratocaster with just a volume knob, and I'm turning it like this, you know.
Up and down?
On, off, on, off, on, off, on. Yeah, and I'm using an echo and a chorus.
Straight into my favorite song on this album, which is Secrets. Secrets sounds way different than anything we had ever heard on a Van Halen album before. It's got some very restrained guitar playing from Eddie Van Halen.
The reason I said I like Secrets as my favorite and Cathedral is because, Cathedral I've been doing for, over a year. And I wanted to put it on record. Dave said, no more fucking guitar solos. He's on an ego trip. He has always been, whatever. And if you print this, I'm going to fucking come up to your house and blow your ass away. But, he just said, fuck this, man. No more guitar solos. And Ted didn't know that that's the way Dave felt. And so one day when Dave wasn't there, I said, Ted, what do you think of this? And what do you think of that? I played him little guitars, the intro, the little flamenco sounding thing.
Oh, yeah.
And Cathedral. And he's going, oh my God, why the fuck didn't you show me this earlier? And I explained to him what Dave just said, fuck the Guitar Hero shit, we're a band. And so Ted just said, fuck Dave.
Tracks in the winter snows. She got a rainbow that touches her shoulder. She be headed where the thunder rolls. Oh, 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 she got that rhythm of the road. Oh, 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 she get crazy, woman get crazy. She can't go. She just looking good. She comes like the secret wind. She's as strong as the mountains, walks tall as the trees. She's been there before, she'll never give in. She'll be gone tomorrow like the silent breeze. Oh, 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 she got rhythm, got that rhythm of the road. Oh, 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 she get crazy, she can't go. But she just looking good. You know how sometimes you got to run. You running blind, but you jump the gun. The question is not does love exist, but when she leaves, where she goes. I got the feeling she don't know either. Wait like the wind, watch where she blows. Oh, oh,
very melodic. Almost sounds like there's a little bit of post-punk, new wave kind of creeping into their sound a little bit, but I love his melodic guitar playing. I love David Lee Roth's lyrics and his vocal on this song. This totally works for me, and if you hate it, I can understand why. It's just a little off-brand for Van Halen, but I feel that it works very well. Then we have Intruder. Of course, I played the interview clip of the story behind this one, so I won't rehash it. But I do think it's a very cool intro. And yeah, it's one of those songs that feels like it's a little bit of padding here, like it goes on and on and on.
Oh, all I'm doing is, hey, I used a beer can, all kinds of weird stuff, just making noise. And it was first take. It took a minute and 40 seconds to do.
And then segues right into Pretty Woman, which is a pretty damn good cover of a Roy Orbison song. It's just Van Halen, again, making Roy Orbison's song their own. And yeah, I'm not a fan of Roy Orbison's version. I don't hate it, but I think Van Halen, they definitely did it a favor by giving it an 80s kind of an upgrade. So I like this version a lot. Flip the album over, and then the most controversial song on the album by far is Dancing in the Street. What in the hell were Van Halen doing covering a Martha and the Vandellas song? Well, David Lee Roth was a huge Motown R&B fan. He grew up listening to that style of music. All of the mixtapes that he would make had a majority of Motown and soul music on it. So that was really kind of where his musical tastes lie. And so he proposed that to Eddie Van Halen before they recorded Pretty Woman. And then eventually, I guess, Eddie got around to working up an arrangement that he felt satisfied with. I don't hate this song. I'm not one of the haters of this song. I think it's okay. I think there's some interesting, guitar sequencing work on this particular song. I do not hate it. I like the vocal on here. You can tell David Lee Roth loves this song. It's a love letter to Martha and the Vandellas, and they do a very respectful version of it. Then we have another intro instrumental. This, of course, is little guitar intro. Right into little guitar. It's a little bit of a Spanish guitar piece, which Eddie Van Halen worked up, and then right into little guitar. I don't know why it had to be an intro. I don't know why it couldn't have just been one long song, but I really feel like they were trying to pad out the track listing as well, trying to make it seem like you were getting more songs on this album.
What I like to do on records is have things in between songs.
Oh, yeah.
Little segues, little whatever, to keep your interest, as opposed to one song, next song,
For sure.
it over. Like, say, Cathedral, or Intruder, or Little Guitar's intro, stuff like that. I love, making the album flow from beginning to end, where you can listen to it from beginning to end without being bored. And I came up with Little Guitar's intro, the Spanish-sounding thing, and I bought a couple of Montoya records, and I'm here, and I'm hearing this guy going finger picking. I'm going, my God, this motherfucker is great. I can't do that. So what I did is I just kind of listened to that style of playing for a couple of days, and I cheated. What I'm doing is trilling on the high E.
With your index
and
and
just
middle?
slapping my middle finger on the low E. And then when I hit the C, I go to figure out some way to make it sound similar to what I really can't do.
Little guitar. My son, he is 10 years old. He loves, not a fan of every Van Halen song, but this is always one. Whenever he gets a hold of my Spotify, he's always putting this song on. So I feel like it has stood the test of time. I like Little Guitars a lot. I like David Lee Roth's vocal on it. And it's cool. It's a little bit different for Van Halen, but I think it works really well.
Would you explain this rather oblique line, Mr. Roth? This can't crow before I get out of the woods. There's exceptions to the rule.
No, Jim, it's can't crow before I get out of the woods, but there's exceptions to the rule. Now, that's an American euphemism that's been used for hundreds of years. It's applicable to the farm people who are on the East Coast, and they say that you can't crow like a crow would crow. Dig it? No, you could. And it's like, and you can't crow because if you get lost in the woods, then a crow will get eaten. Problems will ensue. So a crow will never crow until he's out of the woods and into the open. But there are exceptions to the rule.
The second most, maybe the first most controversial song on this album, depending on how your own taste lie. Big Bad Bill is Sweet William Now. And again, what was Van Halen thinking? This absolutely has David Lee Roth written all over it.
Whose idea was it to do Big Bad Bill?
Oh, that was Dave bought himself one of those Sanyo Walkman things. You know, with FM radio. It's not a Sony.
I had just bought this new thing. It's not a Walkman. It's some other kind. It's one of those little cigarette package-sized audio units, you know, with the little headphones and like that. And I was playing around with it in the backyard. I just put some new batteries in and I wired it up to the car battery through a transformer that the guy who builds our lights made for me. So like, it was my theory that if we increased its sending power as far as playing the tape, then it would increase the receiving power. Now, I don't know about anything about electronics, but he went along with it. And I swear, I was playing around with it with the antenna out and the headphones on, and I started to receive a thing called the Prairie Home Companion Hour from Minneapolis, St. Paul, which apparently broadcasts every Saturday sometime or other. And I could only get it if I held like the full lotus position with my right arm up near my head, but not too far in front of my ear, even with the sideburn, and didn't breathe too heavily. Otherwise, we'd lose the reception. And I happened to catch like that song and maybe two others before we lost reception on the thing. And
then God came on and said, Dave, your time is up. Give slack, son. More batteries.
How did you like working with your father? Was that...
That's not Mr. Van Halen, their father. That's Mr. Van Halen, the janitor at the studio. Mr. Van Halen, their father, would never stoop to this stuff.
I think it was really to Eddie and Alex's credit that they kind of went along with it. And they realized, well, it's kind of a novelty. Sounds like a novelty song. But, you know, they liked the idea of their dad playing clarinet, the clarinet solo on this record. So I think it's a nice little tribute to have their dad, Jan Van Halen. No, I do not hate it. I've pretty eclectic musical taste, so I'm not just strictly hard rock, heavy metal, or nothing else. This song has a certain charm to it, and David Lee Roth sings it great. He sings it in his best Louis Armstrong, Louis Prima type voice. So I'm not gonna lie, I dig this one. Then into the Full Bug. This is my second favorite song on this album. This song again has a great hard rocking swing rhythm to it. Great guitar work by Eddie Van Halen. This band just cooks.
The Full Bug. Does Dave play the acoustic guitar and harmonica?
He plays the intro.
And the harp too?
Yeah.
tell you now. They come to my door, they don't let you pass. Got barely one, gonna buy your ass. Yeah, won't let you pass. I'll take it. Woo! Precious sweetheart, woman, all you want is good as it can get. Ah yeah, blind inspiration, girl, you're sensational, and this gets better yet. Ah yeah, with all your dreams and visions, I place on magazines. No, this ain't television, but it's more than it seems. Takers need a giver, there's much you understand. All I wanna give you, babe, is the best part of a man. Yeah, let me show you, babe, make the best of what you have in hand. Oh yeah, just remember when you follow through, bending over isn't planned. Ah yeah, looks just like an angel, but you're just talking trash. You make conversation, but she's listening to your cash. Takers need to give her this much we understand. All I want to give you one more, the best part of a man.
It cooks on this song. Fantastic freaking song. I love the full bug. And again, that vocal hook, that lyrical hook from David Lee Roth, best part of a man. Great, brilliant, again, lyrical content from David Lee Roth. And then into Happy Trails, which is kind of a cheeky way to close out the album. They had done this, I guess, in concert before they recorded this. They'd done it on a radio broadcast. So this was not the first time they attempted it. I think they just wanted to commit it to tape to have it for posterity. Kind of nice to hear the four of them harmonizing together. I don't hate it, but that's Diver Down. Love it or hate it. If you hate it, I understand. If you love it, that's cool too. But anyway, next time we'll be talking about the album that made them a household name, 1984. Hope you enjoyed this video and take care.